entirely different subject here. This is redevelopment. Early in the campaign, you mailed out a flyer to people talking about Mr. Ruskin's record regarding redevelopment of downtown Redwood City. And not to necessarily get into those allegations, but it raised another question in my mind, and that is, what are each of your philosophies when it comes to redevelopment of downtown cities that are falling apart? Because the state legislature sets the rules by which the cities must follow or not follow to be able to redevelop their downtown areas. So I'm wondering, if you get elected, what changes would you make in state redevelopment law that would enable redevelopment of different parts of communities?
I have a major philosophical problem with what my opponent and his colleagues did on the city council with regards to the use of eminent domain. And so I would take a very close look in terms of how cities are exercising their eminent domain powers. It's an awesome power. You have the ability to kick people off their property. And I believe that that's a necessary power to build, fire stations and schools and freeways and so forth. But in the case of what they did in Redwood City, there's these elderly couple who I talked to recently, by the way, had this business on this property. They took the property in order to build another business there, a cinema movie complex of some type or another. Then they bulldozed these people's property, and then after the fact, a judge found what was done to be illegal use of eminent domain. So I oppose philosophically this notion of using eminent domain to bump one private property owner for another. I think that's wrong, and I'd take a close look at that in the legislature.
Well, how would you get it done if you wouldn't if cities were unable to use eminent domain, or redevelopment authorities were unable to use eminent domain? How would you assemble parcels that are owned by different people to be able to do some of these larger projects?
This whole debacle wouldn't have occurred if they would have been able to assess the fair market value of the property. Part of the problem was that they were lowballing the particular, landowner there, and that caused the whole brouhaha to take place. So I think, cities have an obligation to pay people fairly if they're going to, want to acquire their property for development. But I think the cities just need to be effective negotiators at getting that done if they want to redevelop an area. But philosophically, I oppose the bumping of one private property owner for another. It's another thing, to build a school or a fire station. But to build a movie theater instead of having some other business there, that's just not right. That's not proper use of eminent domain, in my opinion.